Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi. I wanted to take a hiatus from social media, but unfortunately, I feel obligated to speak to the situation of the Muslims in France. The question is, what position do we take? It's one thing to articulate and describe what it is that's going on in France. Tawsif al-Waqa' is one thing. To describe to what the situation is another thing. يعني أن نقف موقفا متينا لإخواننا في فرنسا. That's another situation completely. To take a position with regard to the situation of our brothers and sisters in France. The Muslims in the US have to understand that fascism can articulate itself in more than one manifestation. The fascism that we see that manifests itself in the right is a little different than the fascism that we see manifest itself on the left, specifically in France, because they operate off of the same reality. And that's the reality of a race-based international move on the political level that's rooted in trying to maintain a system of superiority over specific people throughout the world. And so the French have a long history, a long brutal history of how they have dealt with the Muslim community. So when we start talking about the lack of civility is initiated by the colonists, by those who have entered into the Muslim world by colonial policies and neo-colonial policies. They entered the Muslim world by the sword. And so the Muslims living in France have learned how to reconcile with that brutal history. But the French themselves have not learned how to create an environment which is suitable for any sort of reconciliation between those peoples. That is not to say that there's no violations of civil society on the part of people. We're not getting into specifics because we don't condone the approach that people take to destroy civil society, given the fact that what's going on globally is extremely problematic to push currents which destroy civil society. But civil society has rules. And part of civil society is the right to protest, is the right to demand accountability on the part of the government, is the right of people to demand from the international community protections. So what's going on in the Muslim community in France or in French civil society overall is not just the specific situation of what took place with a person identified as a Muslim having committed an act that goes against civil society. There's policies that have created that type of environment. There's an open antagonism towards the Muslim community. And no, we're not going to justify behavior which is problematic, but we are going to say that it's the responsibility of the state to create an environment which is civil enough for people that have historical differences, for them to be able to pursue a sense of safety in their daily livings, right? They should be able to pursue that by demanding from the law that the law keep a certain level of civility in place so that the society doesn't implode. There was a time period where the French, they had an open war, a colonial war on the peoples that are now residents in France. And so those very people that are residents now in France, they've become part of French society in a marginalized way. The French have not understood the necessity of allowing people to maintain their identity, and they want to wipe out the identity of those people. So that's a serious issue. But the Muslims in the US, what position should we take? Because what we're seeing is the collapse of civil society. What we're seeing is a deterioration of the nation state, which is supposed to be a state, a political state, which has a social contract with the people that reside within its boundaries. So there's supposed to be due process. There's supposed to be a sense of pursuing the general well-being of the society. There's supposed to be a regard for religion. The French have decided to take a fascist approach to secularism. And this is in part was alienating the society itself. So our position should be in the immediate to protest in front of French embassies that are located in the US, demanding that France take an approach to restore civility to its society and stop its provocations of the Muslim community. At the same time, we should be in a position where we educate the community on how to respond to these issues. Because if it is the case that there was a Muslim behind that reality, I'm not certain of the facts in that regard, and I didn't dig into that because I'm looking at the bigger picture. But if it was the case that a Muslim responded in a way that violates the code of the society and becomes a criminal act, that has its own problematic feature. But we shouldn't collapse the two issues. We shouldn't collapse the two issues. Because there is an accusation of a Muslim committing a crime, that is another issue that's problematic in itself. But the greater issue is not that. The greater issue is the direction that French society has taken in relation to the Muslim community, in relation to its own population, which is to antagonize and to marginalize and to openly attack its minority community, to suffocate it and to force it into a certain type of integration, which is not going to work in this case. You know, the French community overall, French society owes reparations to the Muslim community for the level of violence and the degree of exploitation that they engage in. So the least that could be done is that they maintain a sense of civility because of the direction that Europe is going in. We can't afford to have a country internally collapse into an open civil war within the European society, because it will destabilize neighboring countries as well. This reality is a problem. You know, this reality is a serious problem. So the Muslim community in the US should exercise its democratic rights to speak out for justice and civil society and stability and an intervention to take place. We shouldn't sit here يعني الموقف عندنا لا ينبغي أن يكون النص في الواقع الذي يجري في فرنسا، ونتكلم في هذا الواقع وما يجري فيه ونطلب من الناس أن ينكر ما يجري. That shouldn't be our position, to just sit here and condemn, you know what I'm saying, what it is that's going on in France. Our position should be practical. You understand what I'm saying? We already know it's a problem. We should be articulating an appeal directly to the French authorities and an appeal to the UN to intervene in that problem, because there's a direct violation of the UN Human Rights Charter, which France is supposed to be a member of the world community in this regard. So what it's doing is it is actually moving to undermine the stability of Europe itself with that type of approach. Because if the liberal fascists are taking that approach, then the right-wing fascists are also going to begin to take that approach. And that's a serious problem. The precedent that the French community has set forward is one which can spiral out of control. And what we may be watching before our very eyes is an internal destabilization of Europe itself. So we have to anticipate the possible domino effects. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility. So we should be demanding of the French. We should exercise our authority, that we have as citizenship, as citizens with citizenship, to speak out against what it is that's going on. We can't, afford destabilization of society. We have similar problems in this country. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to exercise our democratic rights in the well-being of the society. That's important because we have serious human rights violations that are taking place in the West. And as these economies shift and as wealth is siphoned up to those who are the ruling class, what's going to happen is the middle class and the underclasses are going to begin to provoke each other more and more because the resources are going to be limited and opportunities are going to be limited. And people, if they don't learn how to work together and live together, the only thing that's left is fighting each other, and collapsing each other. And that's not, if we're going to take a lesson from history, that's not the way to go. You understand what I'm saying? That's not the direction to go. We can't afford, as much as we have an issue with what goes on in Western society and colonialism and neocolonialism, we have to understand that the greater dilemma here is that global economies depend on the stability of these countries. So it's wise for these countries to stabilize themselves and pursue a path of justice with regard to its own citizens and other people than to contribute to the overall destabilization of the global community. With France right now being in the situation that it is in, monitor the stock markets and watch how this is going to have an impact. You understand what I'm saying? And so any sort of disturbance like this creates disturbances in other places. And right now there was a call for boycotting France. And so the call for boycotting France is going to do something which the French community didn't anticipate. What it's going to do is it's going to cause a rupture in economic transactions. And it's going to affect their bottom line. And just affecting, just responding to the impact of the bottom line is the most uncivil. If you have to be pressured at that level of your livelihood in order for you to act civil, then that is a problem in and of itself. That's a problem in and of itself. And it shows that what we're watching before our very eyes is the dismantling of the capitalist, neo-capitalist system as it was. So what we're moving toward is a political existence in the West in which people are being stripped of their rights one way or another. And the state is participating in that process. That is a serious, serious issue. That's not an issue, that is to be taken lightly. When you start talking about the state intervening in these ways, in a non-neutral way, and participating in dehumanization processes in a state in which we are in a global pandemic with threats to the global economy, this is something which is to cause alarm, is to cause worry, to cause concern, but more than anything, it demands some sort of action. So the minimal that the Muslim community in the West, in the U.S. can do is to protest these realities and to show that we're in solidarity with real rule of law, and order, not a police type of state, but an address of the situation overall. We have to figure out how we're going to live in some sort of harmonious state. It doesn't mean that we have to love each other, but there's a balance that has to be kept. Once that balance is done, then it's just failed state. And we have a number of failed states in the world today. You understand what I'm saying? This is by no way, a call to a compromise sellout position, but that's the least that we can do right now. The higher degree is to discuss these issues at the level of European society, because European society is going in the wrong direction. In reality, we can't be too caught up into that because we have our own issues in the U.S. We have our own issues. We have to focus on the stability of this society and what's going on in this society and how things are playing out in this society. We definitely are not people of solidarity in this society. If this society is provoked in the wrong way, it could be an issue. And that is what we want to prevent. We want to send a message that we believe in civil society, This approach on the part of the government to provoke in this way, and on the part of people to just take, the law in their own hands in that way, that is going to be damaging to the overall well-being. It starts from the top, and it starts from the provocateurs. You know what I'm saying? Again, I don't know who the person is. A case really is not established to who the person is that made that move. You understand what I'm saying? Because that move made was not in the interest of the Muslim community at all. At the end of the day, we see what's going on, and we see that environment where there's intrusions in the masajid. You understand what I'm saying? There's open discrimination. There's attempts to enforce anti-Islamic policy. And so, that becomes a question. So we should, move towards a national protest, a national rally in the least. At a higher level, there should be an open dialogue that's engaged with the UN and with European society as to what direction are they going to take. You understand what I'm saying? Because if this is the direction that keeps unfolding, and if the right joins into that type of struggle, Europe itself is headed for, a damaging future. And that is going to directly impact us. The collapse of the European economy, or any faltering in the European economy, you best believe that is going to impact us. You understand what I'm saying? And it's going to have an impact on Canada. You understand what I'm saying? And that's going to have an impact on us as well. And so we have to realize, people, that, there's forces that are operating, whether those forces manifest by intention or indirectly manifest themselves as a consequence, that are not serving our best interests. So we have to keep our best interests in mind. Our safety, our economic well-being, our physical health, our ability to mature and progress and develop, that's all within our interest. So when those things are violated, our freedom, you understand what I'm saying? When those things are violated, it's a problem. You staying behind a screen is not going to help that situation. You have to organize yourselves, and you have to take a position. You understand what I'm saying? And that organization has to be done in a mature way. It has to be done in a way, which moves the consciousness of people. And so that's the least that we could do. You know what I'm saying? To move towards a national rally, and specifically in front of the French embassies, to let them know that we're not having that. You know what I'm saying? That you claim to be a society of law and order, then you have to carry yourself in that way. You have to carry yourself and abide by that social contract. You cannot have a state turning in on itself, and that is what you have. It's an open attack on the Muslim community, on their religious freedoms that are enshrined in human rights. It's just the fact that the UN Human Rights Charter is something to point to, but there's a human right for you to have the ability to practice, and so on and so forth. And the French themselves have contributed to that internal disintegration. Those are the children, that are resultant of the colonial policies that the French have taken in North Africa and in other places in Africa itself. And that's what you're seeing. You know what I'm saying? And so that type of, fascio liberalism that is there in French society is a problem. And again, people, like I'm saying, if the right decides to take a page out of that, out of that playbook, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. So the Muslims themselves have to take a position. You cannot sit back and not take a position. We don't need to describe anymore what's going on. We understand what's going on. But we have to put pressure, on the right points so that civil society is maintained. And that has to be done across the board, or this can spill out, and the right can join up, and we may see, bloodshed. Europe is not unknown for that reality. Europe is not unknown for that type of reality. And we have to make sure that we're pushing civil society. Those people who have this argument, we have to protect against the left and this and that, they're very mistaken. You understand what I'm saying? We need to have a playbook that is enforcing civil society. We don't have anywhere to go, people. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to migrate to. There's no stability in many places, economically and politically. So the decisions that we make are the decisions that we take for our well-being and the social well-being of the society itself. There's a statement, I want to close with this. There's a statement that is an important statement that was made by one of the mashaykh with regard to the sunan of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, He said in the Quran, وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ لِيُهْلِكَ الْقُرَى بِظُلُمٍ وَأَهْلُهَا مُصْلِحُونَ. And so the idea here is that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala will not destroy a community, a state, a village, an environment, you can say, even though it says qura, but we can extend that ruling to that. If its people are the people that are seeking to bring about the well-being of that community. Now, they translate it as righteous, but muslihun has a deeper meaning than that. So Sheikh Ramadan Bhuti, he said that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala in the Quran honored those people who seek the well-being out of the people of the dunya. And he says, وَلَوْ كَانُوا كَافِرِينَ, even if it is the case that they're the people of kufr. And so he says, وَمَعْنَى الْآيَةِ, that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala is not going to bring destruction to a people or to a nation that is oppressive, as long as there's people seeking out the well-being of that society in their relations between themselves, right? So Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala will not destroy that people for the reason of their kufr, as long as they're seeking justice, in other words, or the well-being. That's muslihin in that case. And so Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, he also related that a society with justice and unbelief can stand, but a society with belief and injustice can't stand. And so the French are taking a path which is going to lead to their own destruction. It's going to be a double jeopardy. As long as they don't pursue a path of justice, the principle of Allah will enact itself. Justice has to be in place in any society in order for it to exist in the right way. Religiosity, so on and so forth, they may exist, may not exist, but a society with oppression cannot exist. It'll turn in on itself and implode. So the French, are pursuing a path of injustice by violating the rights of his people, violating the rights of human beings to just be. Take a position, people. It could be you or me. It could be us. Take a position. We need to organize ourselves. And this is a call to our social justice organizations. We need to have a national rally, and we need to have a show of numbers and force. The minimal is to protest in front of the French embassy and to show that we have an issue with this, and to make an appeal to the international community to intervene before we have another failed state, but this time it'll be in the heart of Europe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.